Hello world, it's Dave again. I'm going to adjust this slightly. So, I got another book review here for you. Richard Adams' Watership Down. I finally got around to reading this. This is a book that I heard about when I was really, really young. You know, I heard about this, I think, when I was still living on Vancouver Island, when I was probably in grade 6 or something. For some reason, I have this memory of this guy telling me about the cartoon that it was adapted into, and how it was hyper violent and just really badass and stuff like that. And so finally, I took it upon myself to read the book and uncover this mystery to figure out what it was like. And I'm so glad that I did, because this book is absolutely exceptional, and it fills a really interesting style. This kind of anthropomorphized animals. So you've got bunnies that it takes place around, and it's their adventure of survival, I guess. I mean, it says that on the particular book cover I have, survival, courage, all these things. And I can tell, I got a few juicy details before I started reading the book, because I was curious about some of the background information on it. And you have all these very strong characters in the book. And I just read a little bit about the author, and I just so happened to come across the fact that he has military experience. He's really well educated, has military experience, and a number of the characters in the book. You've got Big Wig, the big rabbit. You've got Dandelion. You've got Hazel. You've got all these different bunnies, and they're actually modeled after people that he met when he was in the military. Big Wig, who's this really ballsy rabbit fighter, he reminds him of, or he was written after this guy I knew who was a paramilitary or whatever, where they're like jumping, and he said that he would play a game, this guy would play a game with one of his other mates where they would have a grenade and they'd unpin it and then see who would like go the longest tossing it back and forth before the like chicken threw it away. So you kind of get the spirit of this like gung-ho, a little bit nuts, but a really good fighter brought into the character. And then I thought that was kind of cool. And that whole military aspect of his life is shown through the story of the book, where I thought it was really cool. You just had this feeling, as much as, well, there's two things talking about the style of the story, the way it's written, a couple of themes in it. So one thing I really, really like and would recommend for the reading of this book is that when you create an anthropomorphized world, you're going to have these animals, and you wonder, what is their world? It's going to be a little bit unique, or are you going to have it blatantly be as though these animals are like humans, like utterly, and they just do everything they think like humans? But he didn't go down that route. He really went down kind of, what would it be if these animals could talk to each other, and they have a whole spirituality surrounding that creates a culture for them. They have a whole different, there's like a glossary at the end of the book for all the different language that they use, and your suspension of disbelief, the effectiveness in getting you to believe that these animals are, sentient talking creatures, is really affected well by his effort to do this, So when they go and eat, that's called souffle, and there's the whole idea throughout the whole book of how there's bunny or rabbit-like behavior. There's a natural life for them, and they worship the sun, or they don't worship it, but they're aware of the sun as being known as Firth. And I think when you make the effort to do this, you draw the reader in that much more, and you don't just pander to the reader in that you explain everything. So a lot of these times that these words are used initially, if you don't look up the glossary, you kind of have to think for yourself what it is that he's talking about, and sometimes he drops hints, but this isn't always the case. And I really like that, because you've got the story, you're discovering the characters, but you're kind of doing your own detective work as you read, thinking, what could this be that they're referring to? And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it, all the different lingo that he had for this world of the rabbits that you're in. Next to that, like I've mentioned, the military aspect of it, I really enjoyed that to it too, where I've been reading a bunch of stories recently that are kind of like mega huge, multi-plot lines all interwoven together, and so you have a main character that progresses forward, and you have another group of main characters, and then they eventually meet up and cross out and everything. And that's a great style to read. I really enjoy that. But for a change, I really enjoyed reading this book because it takes a central group of characters and you follow them and you don't deviate from that central group of characters, and so you can get very solely invested in them. I think it's just a really effective way to get you to connect with the characters. And he even did this, I always think this is almost a little bit like an author is showing off, but at the beginning of each chapter, he would have some kind of quote relating to some famous character or book or something, and it would start with a little quote. And a number of times, he started with the Odyssey. He alluded to the Odyssey, and I just thought that as much as, he's taking the piss out of us because he's so smart, he can allude to all these different things, but it was so effective, and it made me wish I knew better the other pieces of writing that he was alluding to at the beginning of these chapters, because when I did grasp the things that he alluded to, for example, the Odyssey, it made the anticipation of that chapter so much higher, and the foreshadowing for it so much clearer, and I could tell, the more of these allusions that you knew, you'd be continually drawn into the story that much more. And so, like I say, it kind of had this Odyssey adventure feel to it, and because of his military background, it was almost like you were following around like a platoon of surviving soldiers, and that's how these rabbits behaved, And I really, really enjoyed that. I liked the really straight-cut adventure that it is, that you follow this one group, the militaristic influence that you have. There's even one point where there's like rabbits the rabbits, another part of their society is that they have the Ausla, and the Ausla are like the strongest rabbits in the warren, and they're not the police, but they kind of like they're the strong arms that protect the warren and all this different stuff. And when they go to this other like evil warren, there's the Auslafa, and I thought, as soon as I heard that, I was like, what? That's like he's making some sort of allusion to Germany there. He has to be. And then it stuck out later in my mind that anybody in this warren was also marked by 3 claw marks on their arm. And whether that's a direct allusion to a swastika or just the idea of being marked and having a symbol, he's got all this really cool allusions to war and that kind of behavior or politics, whatever it is, take it at face value or not. He seemed to be like, weaving tons of things into this. So it's like it has this, I'm kind of rambling, but that's how I feel about this one. There's a whole, like I say, a spirituality to the rabbits, and they have all the stories that have come before them. And something that's really important to the rabbits is that they be cunning, and they have this rabbit. His name is El Hakrerach. It's like this crazy spiritual named rabbit, which is basically the story is separated into the main story that you're following, and then occasionally the bunnies will want to hear a story, and they usually tell a story of El Hakrerach, and it's this great bunny that came before them. And so you get this fairy tale-like quality to it, and you get drawn deeper into, as I say, the world of the rabbits because of this story that's continuously being told that has, like fairy tale kind of feeling to it, which was really interesting. All these incredible different aspects to the story that just make it utterly unique. It makes me interested to read more of these kind of anthropomorphized stories some more. I think there's a series called Redwall, with like rats and stuff like that are talking, kind of like Wind in the Willows sort of stuff. So it was really, really fantastic and good for. I wanted a straightforward adventure out of it. I got it, but then in doing something straightforward like that, still pulled off originality completely with these aspects of the storytelling, with the deeper culture that you get to explore of the rabbits. All the allusions to actual like wartime events, like the swastika, or it's just the whole time you're reading this book, you're really, really thinking, let alone it is beautifully written. I know that I've said that he's educated, but there are just some scenes, I read over and over again. I'll get really hippie on this, but I just love reading them. It's really beautiful. I'm trying to write myself, so, I try and stick in my head this really, really good stuff that I come across. So an incredibly strong book. If you want something utterly unique, go for this guy. It's great. Turns out it's a classic for a reason. This then turned me on to his other book that he did called Plague Dogs, and I only just watched the cartoon, and it was amazing too. Very, very sad story, but very, very good. And I should say as well, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, that there is the cartoon for Watership Down as well. And I really like to make the point, that these were made in something like 1978. And it's just a testament to the fact that if you do something well and with heart, it'll stand the test of time. Because when you're watching it and you're thinking, wow, this animation style is really dated, you don't think about it in a negative thing, though, because the plot and the heart that's gone into it just makes it a cool piece of art and kind of a testament to that piece of time, not as something cheap, but as something that really embodied, the good things that they were doing at the time. So the movie's also good as well. It's almost like Watership Down light. It follows really, really close to the story, but of course, that old cliche, can just never be as good as the book. There's just so much more characterization and detail in the book than that is not in the movie. But the movie was really, really faithful as far as it could be, and great art, really, really great art, something that you can just kind of like zone out on, and very, very different for the time that it was made in. So a fantastic book. So glad that I read it. I'm reading a really good one now, which will be in the next review, called Horns by Joe Hill, who is actually the son of Stephen King, but he didn't want to get published because of his father's fame, and so he wrote under the pen name, and he did get published, which I think is awesome. That's really, really impressive, and it's wicked. So I'm starting to deviate from the theme here, from the Watership Down, but that'll be coming up next. More reviews to come. If you enjoy this, please do like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And like I like to say, until we meet again next time, world, thanks for tripping with Dave. Ciao for now. Peace.